Yo, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Gunnar Olson, and as always, I'm here with Thrifty Travelers executive editor, Kyle Potter. And Kyle, I'm afraid that between the two of us, we've exhausted all of our travel luck for the year because last week you successfully flew home from Newark after 5 p.m., which is a feat in and of itself. And then I flew Delta during their meltdown on Sunday through a snowstorm in Detroit on my way back from East Lansing. Both of us hit delays. My 3.5 hours on the tarmac in Detroit was a real treat, a real low light of my trip. But we both made it. So are you afraid that you burned through all of your good mojo for the year, flying back from Newark and making it home?
Yeah, I'm not getting on a plane at least until 2026. I was so sure that my flight home from Newark, which has been one of, if not the single worst airport in the United States over the last 40 plus days, I was so sure that was going to get canceled altogether and I was going to be stuck in beautiful Newark, New Jersey overnight, if not longer, and made it home with about a 2-hour delay. So yeah, I'm not pushing my luck.
I knew things were going to be bad on Sunday morning. I woke up in East Lansing and looked out my window and it was just nuking snow outside. I was like, oh man, here we go. And of course, we didn't even take off until after my connecting flight left for Minneapolis out of Detroit. So I got on the next one though. My Delta app tried to rebook me through Cleveland, Detroit to Cleveland to Minneapolis on the way home. And I went into a Sky Club and found an agent who was wearing a premium services pin and was like, is there anything we can do about this?
Hey, let's talk about Cleveland. How about no?
Yeah, Cleveland's not going to work for me. Okay, we have a lot to get to today. Our main topic is going to be what to do when things go wrong in travel, which could come in handy over the next few days as the air system slowly recovers, but also as the winter and kind of busy holiday season approaches. I think this is a pretty evergreen topic, and these are all just good tools to have in your belt overall. We're going to do a full shutdown update. We're going to talk about a way to earn points on your mortgage. We're going to talk about Qatar Airways going basic, and we're also going to chat about what our team got up to during our company retreat in Palm Springs. Did I get overserved at the pool in front of all my coworkers? You're going to have to stay tuned to find out. Only Kyle knows the answer to that right now.
Oh, I'm going to give an answer.
All right, welcome back to the Thrifty Traveler Podcast. Okay, Kyle, to start the show, I need to find something out. So as we're taping this, it appears this now historic government shutdown has an end in sight. But as of right now, the shutdown has just officially mangled U.S. airspace. In our extra mile topic later, like I said, we're going to show you all of what we do when things go wrong for our travels, which of course is top of mind for both of us this week and many other people who are heading out into the skies. But this stuff can be useful at any time. Air travel delays and cancellations hit whenever, and they can be especially gnarly during the holiday travel season and during kind of winter storm season as well. But first, I just want to talk about the challenges we're facing this week, Kyle. So what's the latest on the shutdown?
Well, so we're recording this on Monday when, it seems like there's going to be a final vote at some point this week, perhaps before this episode actually drops on Thursday morning, to reopen the government, which means the shutdown will come to a close. But, as we're talking right now, it's very clear, and let's caveat, this could change quickly, but it seems pretty likely that the trouble in air travel that we've seen, especially over the weekend, which was really brutal, is just going to continue. So Sunday was easily among the worst days in air travel that we've seen in the United States in the last 2 years. Probably the single worst day when you talk about both delays and cancellations since the day one of the CrowdStrike outage in the summer of 2024, when basically every single airline in the United States and some abroad had to halt all traffic for most of that day. So we saw on this past Sunday almost 3,000 cancellations and more than 10,000 delays. That is just brutal. And the problem is this is what we've been talking about for weeks as FAA staffing shortages got worse and worse, and airports had to start to slow down inbound and outbound traffic in order to cope with that, is that eventually the bill comes due. And eventually airlines can't catch up to having all of their crews and their planes out of place, and it starts to snowball. And that's really what we started to see this weekend, which means, sure, the government may reopen and paychecks may start flowing, but that's no guarantee that the air traffic controllers, some of whom might have left the workforce altogether, are going to be back on the job first thing Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. This is going to take time, and in the meantime, there are still going to be more challenges for airlines to get back on track.
Yeah, I think that is a really important point here, is that this is not going to reset overnight. There's no reset button for all of this. These crews have to eventually get back to where they started, and they need to kind of realign everything in their networks. And so that means that, a cancellation that happened on Sunday could be touching a flight that's happening the following Sunday. These things happen in kind of a long period of time. So be patient and expect some more disruptions as we go forward. But I guess my question to you, Kyle, is, as an expert in this, how long should we expect something like this to happen? Or how long are these disruptions going to last?
Let me just get my crystal ball quick from under the table where I keep it in our podcast studio. No, I don't know. I do think that it would be wise to expect significant issues at least through the rest of this week. Is it going to be as bad as it was on Sunday with 10,000 delays and almost 3,000 cancellations? Gosh, I hope not. But that's not out of the cards. It really depends on how and if airlines can recover, and if airlines, despite the fact that the government shutdown may be drawing to a close, if they're forced to continue ramping up their mandated cancellations by the federal government, that decision that the FAA made late last week to force airlines to cut 3, 4, 5, and then 10% of their flights. If that's just going to exacerbate things. So it's possible that this continues at the scale that we've been seeing within the past few days, all week and then beyond. And then I think the big question is once we get past this week and once we get into mid and late November, and importantly Thanksgiving, how well equipped is air traffic control in our national airspace to return to business as usual? So over the weekend, U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said that in normal times, they lose 3 or 4-ish controllers a day to exiting the workforce, to retirements, to taking a new career, whatever. And that recently that has gotten as high as 15 to 20 a day. And throughout the last 40 plus days of this government shutdown, they have been unable to recruit and train new air traffic controllers, which means, and this is what Secretary Duffy said, this is going to have ramifications far beyond the shutdown. And just how big those are remains to be seen. I will say, especially because Thanksgiving is the busiest of busy travel seasons, there's always the possibility that there's going to be bad weather. So I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I really don't think that things are going to be as ugly as they have been within the last week or so once we get to Thanksgiving. But people are going to need to be really patient and really vigilant for issues because we're not out of this yet.
Yeah. Sunday, November 30th, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, is always the busiest travel day of the year, and that is a day that I would avoid flying on at all costs at this point.
Yeah.
It is an absolute no-go for me. But yeah, this is to be seen how long this is going to last. We'll definitely be covering it here and at thriftytraveler.com. We have an update every single day on everything that's going on, but check your flights and be in the know. We will talk about later on in the Extra Mile topic on some of the best ways to handle these issues as they arise. All right, let's get into something hot and something cold. It's the good and the bad news and travel news from the last week. And we'll start with our something hot, which is Bilt Rewards. Is it a travel company, a bank, a housing company? How would you describe what Bilt Rewards is?
On paper, I would say it's a travel rewards ecosystem. In practice, it seems like they're trying to just take over everyone's daily life because everything that they're doing, they're doing everything. They're doing everything everywhere all at once. They're trying to be top of wallet, top of mind to not just earn points on rent, but some point your mortgage, right? And new credit cards, new ways to earn more points on dining, on your online shopping. I mean, where does this end? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll pause here to note that Bilt is a sponsor of this show, not this episode in particular, but several other episodes of the Thrift Traveler podcast, including last week. Our agreement does not in any way impact how we're going to cover this company. We'll always cover them objectively. So objectively, Kyle, Bilt Card 2.0 is one of their two big announcements from last week. What do you think?
This is big news. So we've known for a while that Bilt was going to move away from just their sole current Bilt Wells Fargo card and move into a new suite of cards, but we never really knew much of the details. And I'll say we don't know all of the details yet, but we do know that sometime early next year in February, Bilt is going to introduce not one, not two, but three different co-branded credit cards. They'll continue with a no annual fee card. They will move to a kind of middle of the market $95 a year card with additional perks. And then, of course, because you can't talk about travel without talking about premium travel, they're introducing a $495 annual fee card. So this is a big change. Current Bilt Wells Fargo card holders, your card will stay active until then, and then you'll be given the option to switch into one of these new products once this comes around. But the old Bilt Wells Fargo card is gone. You can't apply for it anymore. So a lot of change on the credit card front.
Yeah, a lot of change there. So what else did Bilt announce this last week?
The biggest thing is points on mortgage. This has been, I mean, from the moment that Bilt hit the scene years ago as a way to earn points on your rent payments, the question has always been, what about my mortgage? And we've gotten drips and little bits of information over the last few months about, yes, we're working on it. Yes, it's going to happen early 2026. And what we heard initially just a couple of weeks ago was that Bilt was going to partner with one mortgage provider, United Wholesale Mortgage, which on the one hand is the single largest mortgage provider in the country. But on the other hand, if you don't have a United mortgage, it's not super relevant to you, right? And what we found out is, well, we still don't have some very key specifics, namely how many points you can earn on your mortgage. You know, what's the per dollar figure? Is there a cap on this? We don't know any of that. But we do know that as they roll out these new credit cards, you will be able to earn points on any mortgage from any mortgage provider with one of these three new credit cards coming out early next year. So that's big. You know, that opens the door to earn some incredibly valuable points on, you know, the single biggest expense that any American has right now.
Yeah, I think Bilt has a really impressive roster of transfer partners, and so spending Bilt points has always been something that makes that currency really, really valuable. I do think that some people wish that there were some easier ways to earn Bilt points because they, for instance, until now haven't done sign-up bonuses for their credit cards or anything like that. But they are introducing a new good way to earn besides the mortgages, and that's through one of our favorite shopping portals, right?
Yeah, this partnership with Rakuten could be a game changer, right? You know, Rakuten has been our number one recommendation as a shopping portal to earn points on your online shopping. And for years, you've been able to earn American Express membership rewards points. So you can link your Amex account if you have an Amex Platinum or an Amex Gold card. And instead of earning cash back, earn, you know, a significant amount of points instead to your Amex account. And now Bilt is getting into the system as a partner to earn Bilt points instead. And, you know, to your point, for as easy as it is to earn Amex points through credit cards and your daily spending and big bonuses, Bilt is just not there. That's the number one knock against them. So, you know, given the choice to do this versus American Express, that's pretty tempting, with one really, really important caveat, which is that, you know, you need some level of Bilt status, which means you need to be spending through the program pretty heavily in order to earn like the full one-to-one cash back to points using Rakuten, except for, you know, entry level, they call them blue members, can do that within the first, I think, 6 months. So there's a window here to do that and earn, you know, $1 of cash back for every, or 100 Bilt points for every $1 of cash back you earn through Rakuten.
Yeah, something good, something hot, lots of good Bilt news from the last week. We want to have a bigger picture conversation about Bilt sometime in the future on this show as well. But for now, we just wanted to touch on these two really good news stories for people who want to play in this ecosystem, get to know it a little bit more. Let's see how long they can stay in the something hot column and not get into the something cold column, which we will pivot to now. I believe this will be Qatar Airways' debut in something cold. We don't really talk about Qatar Airways in any sort of negative light because they do a lot of really fun things in points and miles. I think for our money, for our points, Qatar Airways operates what we think is the best business class experience in the world with Q suites. 70,000 Avios each way. If you book way out in advance is how you can book these seats. And we couldn't recommend more that you do. So what I'm talking about is, while this is one of the best redemptions in the sky, Qatar just attached a big, stupid caveat on it. What am I talking about, Kyle?
We're talking about basic business class, which that phrase is just a little nauseating, right? Yeah. So going forward, all award tickets on Qatar Airways, you're not going to get a seat assignment. When you book, you have to pay. And then I think the question is, how much further does this go? Whether they strip out lounge access from award tickets. I don't know, but it's a bummer to, spend 70,000 points, 85,000 points if you're making a connection onward to, India or Southeast Asia or wherever, and then have to pay an additional $100+ in order to pick which seat you want rather than get assigned something randomly. It's really frustrating. It's troubling for two reasons. One is just it's another expense. And just a couple of years ago, Qatar and British Airways and all the Avios programs raised the surcharges that you pay. So instead of paying $100 or so for a nonstop flight in surcharges to fly between the U.S. and Doha, you're now paying $250 and then closer to $400 if you're making a connection. And so you just add on to that, the cost of picking a seat. It's just really annoying. Bigger picture, though, I just worry, for an airline whose pedigree is as high as Qatar Airways, like what kind of permission does this give every other airline in the world to start doing this? Because they can all point at Qatar Airways, which has been the number 1 or number 2 ranked airline, at least by Skytrax, which take it or leave it, but in this case, it holds up. It has been the number 1 or number 2 ranked airline for basically the last decade. And if they're doing this, you can bet every other airline in the world is going to do something like this in relatively short order. So that part's just kind of troubling.
Yeah, they will unfortunately set the table for everyone else to copy them. One note on this, this does exclude Qatar status holders. So if you do have some status with the airline, or I believe reciprocal status with some of their partners, you can get around these seat selection fees. But yeah, this is a bummer. I don't have a ton else to say about it other than we wanted to make sure that we note it and don't let the airlines come up with these policies and not and go unseen with it. I guess we just want to make sure we call them out and let everybody know exactly what you're getting when you're spending your hard-earned points on a Q Suite seat.
Yeah, that status exception is important. I think especially for U.S.-based travelers, if you have One World Emerald or Sapphire status, you also can get this seat selection fee waived. So there is an avenue here, at least for a select few, to avoid paying this. I don't know that we know for sure yet whether this is going to apply if you're redeeming like American Advantage miles or Alaska mileage or Alaska Atmos miles, excuse me. But that's kind of a moot point because, this is one of, if not the single best business class seat in the world. It has become virtually impossible to book unless if you're using British Airways or Qatar Avios 360 plus days in advance, because it's just you won't find any seats using American Advantage miles or Alaska miles these days. It's borderline impossible. So I don't know that it really matters in the end anyway.
Yeah. Okay. We have a lot more to get to today. We want to talk about all of the best ways to handle delays and cancellations in the sky, and then figure out once and for all if I got too drunk in front of my coworkers in Palm Springs. We'll be right back.
There are hotel deals out there that the general public never sees, and HotelSlash gives you the keys to them. It's a members-only site with exclusive hotel rates, usually 20 to 40% cheaper than booking direct or through the big travel sites. And they show you the real all-in pricing, taxes, fees, even resort fees. no surprises.
Yeah, just look at this. A 5-night stay at the Eshkaret Resort was $4,900 on HotelSlash compared to around $5,700 on other sites. That's nearly $800 saved on the exact same trip. Try it free. Head to HotelSlash.com, use code ThriftyTraveler, and get a 90-day trial membership. Plus, save up to $20 on your first prepaid booking when you check out with that code. HotelSlash, the smarter way for thrifty travelers to book hotels. Okay, welcome back. Let's dig into the extra mile where we go a little deeper on travel topics. And I think the most important travel topic on the top of minds for everybody this week is what to do when things go wrong in travel. You and I both battled through some delays recently this past week, but of course it gets a lot worse than that. Sometimes your flight just gets outright canceled and you misconnect, and things happen all over the skies all the time, not just during big meltdowns, during shutdowns, or during winter storms. So let's start at the beginning. I want to do this kind of through the booking process. So we'll start with some processes you should go through when you're booking your flights, maybe what you should do between booking and travel, and then we'll talk about the day of travel and some of the things we do to protect ourselves there. So, Kyle, when you're booking your flights, what are one or two things that you do to make sure that you're protected?
Right. I mean, there's no getting away from sounding like a broken record here. The number one thing is just to book the first flight of the day. This is the best decision that you can make in good times and bad to protect yourself from the prospect of disruptions, because the longer the day goes on, the more likely that these problems are going to cascade in your flight. The odds are greater that it's going to be affected as these problems start to mount. So you get on that first flight of the day, I would say at the latest 9 a.m., that's the best decision that you can make. I do not love waking up at 4:30 a.m. and making my way to the airport, but every single time I do it, I feel like I look back at what happens with the rest of the flights that day, at least in times when things are starting to go off the rails. And I'm like, you know what, this was so worth it, because, my flight might have ended up being delayed by another couple hours or more had I not taken that 7 or 8 a.m. flight.
Yeah, the data analysis I did a few months ago now was that the early morning flights operate 30% better than the flights do at the end of the day in tough times. So like, for instance, in the peak summer months in the south and southeast, or kind of during these winter storms, the plane that is parked at your airport overnight is almost always going to leave on time the next day. And the planes that are coming in or making 6 or 7 domestic stops before they get to you for your 7 p.m. flight, that's where you get in trouble. It's too many variables. Just take the plane that's been sitting there overnight.
I had a flight that it was the first flight of the day. This was a couple of months ago. It took off on time, but then we had to divert back to the airport due to a mechanical issue. But because it was so early in the morning, there was still a spare plane for them to put us on. Had that happened just a couple hours later, I guarantee you that would not have worked, and I would have missed my connecting flight.
All right, first flight of the day is our number one with the bullet always advice. We always take the first flight of the day. One thing I always would recommend too, especially if you can foresee that things might get a little tricky if you're booking in those, if you're booking in the south and southeast during the summer, you're booking in the upper Midwest in the winter. Booking a flexible fare is something that I would always recommend. Book main cabin or better, just to make sure that you're covered, and to make sure that if you need to change your flight to that first flight of the day, you have some protection there. So anything else on what fares to book, Kyle?
No, I mean, I think especially when it's a really important trip, there is the prospect for problems based on the time of year or where you're traveling. I think to your point, the South in the summer, I would say the East, anything in and out of the East Coast, basically year round. And the Midwest during the winter, giving yourself the flexibility to change without paying a fee, or change period, or cancel your flight without paying a fee and getting a credit for the amount that you paid. Being able to make a same day change with at least reasonable fees if you can do it at all. I mean, basic economy fares in many cases are $70, $80, even $100 cheaper round trip. So I understand that, especially for somebody listening to the Thrifty Traveler podcast, that seems like it's worth it, and it can be. But, when you're worried about things going wrong, this just gives you a lot more power to change and pivot quickly without paying for it in the long run.
Do you get more questions about travel insurance than anything else in this line of work, Kyle? How many times a week do you get a question about travel insurance? It is the most surefire question I get from like tangential friends and family out there who want to know.
Oh yeah,
travel questions.
It's constant, and you know what? For good reason. When we're talking about stuff like this, about a government shutdown or a winter storm, or it is nonstop. Do you need travel insurance? Maybe. It would feel foolish right now in the wake of what we've been seeing to say, no, it's not worth it. That said, travel insurance, you need to read the fine print, and you need to read the fine print before you actually buy it, or before you charge your flights to a premium travel credit card that has built-in travel coverage, to make sure that you're getting what you're getting. And so, just as we've gone through this shutdown and people have gotten stuck somewhere overnight and counted on the fact that they bought that travel insurance policy, or they used that Chase Sapphire card with built-in travel coverage and assumed that they would be covered for, a $300 hotel stay because they got stuck in New York or in LA overnight. We come to find out it's not so cut and dry, because, it really does come down to the fine print of what situations are covered and which are not. So I do still think it's worth keeping in mind, but yeah, you really got to read that fine print of whatever you're buying or whatever you're using to make you're covered for what you hope to be covered for, because that is not always the case. Surprise, surprise with insurance, right?
Yeah, and it's not enough to hold the card. You have to book the travel that's affected with that card, and there are a lot of fine print details that honestly I don't really have time for. My version of travel insurance is I book main cabin and I book directly with the airline whenever possible. And that brings me to my next point is, especially in times like this, it helps a lot to have your booking made directly with the airline, because they're the ones who are most likely to help you. When the poop hits the fan, you always want to be talking with the person that you booked with and not having, Chase ping-ponging you back and forth between Delta or American's website and then back to their agents and back to some Delta agents. And then you have a lot of people passing you around on phone lines, and that's not how to get things done when things go bad.
Yeah, you got to cut out the middleman. I mean, I think that is good evergreen advice, even when skies are blue and everything is fine. But, especially when you are concerned about disruptions, or you need to get home for the holidays and, there is the prospect of bad weather, whatever the case may be, it's just so important to cut out the middleman. Make sure you can deal directly with the airline, whether it's on the phone, via text, or in person at the airport at a desk or in a lounge, because, if you book that ticket through Expedia or somewhere else, these people are not going to be able to help you. And you got to pick up the phone and call somebody thousands, if not tens of thousands of miles away to try to help you out when timing is everything. It's not worth whatever minimal amount you may save on that ticket on the front end.
Yeah, absolutely. Last piece of booking advice from me is just to flex your points and miles in times like this, especially. I think when you have $500, $600 tied up in something, the stakes feel really high when things go wrong, and you're looking at that amount of money and am I going to get that back? And then I may have to pay that again to get on a different flight. When it comes to points and miles, this is exactly where they shine. It's just like ultimately flexible, and you're way, way less out of pocket, even if you're flying long haul international where the taxes and fees are a little higher. But like, for instance, my flights this weekend booked with points and miles, I had $6 in cash to, just the taxes and fees tied up, and that's it. So I think they're especially good for booking alternative flights, which is something we'll talk about in this next section too. But just having points and miles as like a security blanket, as a form of insurance in and of itself, is a way that I like to use it. Points and miles can take you all around the world in business class in all these incredibly luxurious ways, but also in a pinch, it can get you and your wife, home for a last minute funeral or on an alternative flight after your, other flight got canceled. So points and miles are important for that, and that's how I like to use them in times like this.
I think there's an important wrinkle here, especially under the umbrella of what we're talking about, of when things go wrong, and whether or you think or you're worried about things going wrong. I would say use points and miles, absolutely. But I would skew really hard towards booking through one of the major U.S. airline programs rather than booking a Delta flight using Air France KLM Flying Blue Miles. Sure, that may save you a couple thousand points or whatever, but booking with Delta Sky Miles instead. using United miles to fly United, using American Advantage miles to book that American flight is really important for two reasons. If you end up just not taking the trip altogether, none of these airlines charge cancellation fees to get your miles back. But probably more importantly, if something does go wrong and you need to change or rebook that flight, it's going to be much easier to do that. In many cases, you can just do it through your smartphone app with that airline versus, if you're flying Delta from Minneapolis to Chicago and you use 6,500 Air France KLM Flying Blue miles, that trip needs to change. You have to pay a cancellation fee, which is minimal on many of these kind of partner airline award booking workarounds. But also, if something goes wrong, again, you have to deal with Air France in order to change that ticket. So it's just, especially when the prospect of things going wrong is high, it's not worth the savings. It's much better to book directly with the airline using that airline's miles.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's talk about this kind of middle section, the lead up to your travels between booking and actually flying. What are you doing in that time when you see that things are starting to go wrong?
I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying, Kyle, poop's about to hit the fan. No, honestly, I think expectations are the most important thing in travel. And, I think a lot of what people have dealt with these last few weeks with the shutdown, what people deal with in the winter, is born out of the fact that they go into their travel day assuming that their plane is going to take off at 8:05 a.m. exactly when they book it, and it's going to land at 11:49 a.m. exactly when it was scheduled to land. And that is just not how travel works sometimes, especially when things start to go sideways. So I think just going into your travel day, your travel week, expecting or at least bracing for the possibility that things are going to go wrong and you're going to have to pivot. That is going to get you thinking about some of the other things we're going to talk about looking into alternatives and backups, and also just much more better mentally prepared to deal with these curveballs as they come, because if you're not ready for it, you're going to be caught pretty flat-footed.
So what are you watching? What helps you determine how things are going, and where are you getting that information?
I mean, right now it's been all over the news, right, with the shutdown. But in normal times, I think the best thing to do in the days leading up to your flight is to check a service like flightaware.com and look at the daily rundown of delays and cancellations within the United States and see which airports might be struggling more than others to get planes on and off the ground on time. Because, if you're departing on a Tuesday, and you look at the data on a Monday and you see that your airline has delayed 30+% of flights, it's a pretty safe bet that there's going to be a spillover effect into Tuesday as a result of that. So that can just get you in the right frame of mind for expecting just how bad or hopefully not so bad things may be when you actually wind up at the airport.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would also say, keep an eye on the airline websites, because that brings me to our next point, which is travel waivers and how important these can be and how useful they can be. I was on, 6 different news channels last Thursday as these things started to cascade and delays and cancellations got really bad, and people were asking a lot of questions. And the first thing I tell anybody who asks is, did your airline issue a travel waiver? American, Delta, and United almost always do, especially when things like this happen and like during winter storms, for instance. And, are you taking advantage of it? Because the travel waiver essentially means you can change or cancel your flight, no questions asked. And when you make those changes, you don't have to pay change fees, which are a thing of the past anyway, or in many cases, the flight cost difference, right? So you can change to whatever flight of the day you want. You could change to another day. If you want to make your flight a little better and pick a better time for you, you can do that, or you can book that first flight of the day, which is what I recommended that everybody do. But these travel waivers are very powerful, and when the airlines issue them, I recommend almost always, unless you have already booked the perfect flight, that you should take advantage always when travel waivers are issued.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect example of this is winter storms don't come out of nowhere, right? We typically get 3, 4, 5 days warning. And like clockwork, every single major airline in the country, and some of the smaller ones even, will come out with these waivers that allow you to do exactly what you're talking about, change to a different flight without paying a fee or a fare difference. And there's typically a pretty wide window to do this, which means, let's say you're scheduled to fly out on a Wednesday, but that's the day that the storm is supposed to begin. These waivers can allow you to depart on Tuesday instead without paying more to get out of town before that storm actually hits. But the biggest thing with this is you have to move really quickly because, look, there are a limited amount of seats out there. And the longer that you that you kind of hem and haw about whether to do this, the more likely that one of your fellow passengers that was supposed to be on your original flight has already taken a seat that you might have taken instead. So you got to beat them to it. You got to be decisive. You have to do these things quickly, especially for that first flight of the day, because that's what a lot of people are going to wind up moving to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's talk about, we've hinted at this a few times, alternative flights. I mentioned that the best way to book an alternative flight, this is the problem, is if you're booking an alternative flight, a lot of cases you're doing this at the last minute. If you are really on top of things and you want to book an alternative flight 5 or 6 months out where you can actually get a good deal on it, probably smart, especially if it's fully refundable. But I don't think a lot of people have the bandwidth or the points stockpiled or the money to want to do that in general. But if and when you use this, how do you do it?
Yeah, it really is primarily day of. So maybe I'm not the best example here, but I'll put it this way: as I was in the Uber going to Newark to fly home last week, started getting the first of what became several delay notifications of 30, 40 minutes or more, and it just kind of kept coming and coming. But once I got that first one, I was like, okay, this isn't great. So let's start thinking about what the backups are. So, you pull up Google Flights, you look at, all right, I'm flying out of Newark. What does it look like tomorrow morning in case that's what I need to suggest moving to if my flight does get canceled? Or is there anything departing from LaGuardia or JFK? So if you're flying in or out of a market that has several different airports, you can start casting a wider net. Really importantly, Google Flights, part of the reason why we love it is it allows you to search for up to 7 airports at one time, both departing and arriving to. So you can cast a wide net in one single search. You just got to start looking into this stuff as soon as possible. And to your point, especially if you're booking a backup, not just you need to change your flight, but a backup in case your number one flight ends up, being disrupted. Using points for that is really important because, you can easily cancel that and just get all your miles back again if you're booking through one of the major U.S. airline programs.
Yeah, make sure to make a note of that flight so you don't lose out on that money with a no-show fee or something like that. The way that I do this, I typically don't book alternatives proactively, but what I have talked about on the show many times, my strategy of booking and rebooking flights. I don't need to cancel. As soon as I rebook for something better, I don't cancel the other one immediately. I'll just let both reservations exist all the way up until travel if I don't need the points. So, for instance, when we're going down to Dallas to connect to Finland later this year, which actually we're going to talk a little bit more on the show next week about this upcoming trip of mine. But I had an American flight that I booked down to Dallas, and then the Delta flight came on with Sky Miles much, much cheaper. I'm just going to hold both reservations because that's a flight in the middle of December. It could be right in the middle of winter storm season, and who knows what could happen with either one of those. So I'm just going to hold both until either I need those AA points back or until we get to the day of travel, and then I can dump it and get all those points redeposited. So it's not as proactive a thing for me as it's just I don't cancel flights immediately when I book a redundant one just because it is good to have options.
Yeah, that's a good point. One last thing, as much as, booking a backup flight with points is probably the best way to stay flexible and not be out money, there are 2 airlines that really stand out for those kind of last minute backup flights, just in case I need them. So there is the 24-hour rule in the United States. You have up to 24 hours, in some cases more, to cancel a flight for a full refund within 24 hours of booking. But most airlines say that doesn't apply if you're booking within 3 to 7 days of departure, which really kind of nixes the value of the 24-hour rule for this situation, except both Delta and Southwest don't have that policy at all, which means, if you're flying American and American looks like it's on the verge of a meltdown and you want to book a backup flight, but you're not sure and you're seeing things that day and there's a Delta flight that looks reasonable that can get you to where you need to go, but you're hoping you don't need to take it, you can book that Delta flight with your credit card. If it turns out you don't need it, you can still cancel it within that 24-hour window for a full refund. Same goes with Southwest.
Nice. Good points there as well. Okay. I want to do another plug for Flighty. Our favorite app. They do not sponsor the show, but Flighty, I mean, you should.
They may as well be. Well, at this point, why would they? We're giving them free press anyway.
That's right. Flighty is a flight tracking app. It tracks every little detail of every one of my upcoming flights and past flights, and most importantly for this discussion, has really solid data around predicting delays and understanding where your plane is coming from, kind of future casting. This delay in Omaha is going to affect this next flight to Detroit, which is going to affect my flight from Lansing to Detroit, and so on and so forth. And it predicts like 2 days in advance if there are issues coming up. And basically the data is just kind of unmatched, and the way they deliver it is in this beautiful format. I can't speak highly enough about Flighty. It's saved me so many times from delays and cancellations as well. Why do you love it in times like this?
For everything that you just said. I mean, the information is power, knowledge is power, and Flighty delivers that in an easy to understand and more immediate fashion than anything else. I mean, I have lost track of the number of times that I've gotten a notification from Flighty 10, 15, 30 minutes, an hour or more before I get an email from the airline or before I get a push notification from the airline. And, especially when things start to go sideways, literally seconds matter. I mean, if you can get a 10-minute heads up on the fact that your flight is about to be canceled before Delta or American or United actually send that notification, that gives you 10 minutes to cut the line in front of everybody else long before they even start thinking about, oh, shoot, I have to find a replacement flight now. I got to go talk to this Delta or this American agent. I mean, that time is invaluable to get where you need to go and get that plan sorted out without going through those long lines, and get on the number one replacement flight that you can before that starts to fill up.
Yeah. We heard from a listener this week too. Nicole Payne reached out to us and just thanked us for our enthusiasm around Flighty because she downloaded it. She was notified of a 5-hour delay in Mendoza, which gave her and her husband more time to explore the city center. She said, "Thanks to Flighty, my husband and I spent most of that time roaming city center, now sipping Malbec in the lounge." Sounds really, really lovely, Nicole.
Do you think she had 2 Malbecs?
I hope she had 2
She followed
Malbecs.
your advice one time. She might as well follow it a second time.
With a 5-hour delay, I would bet that she had time to. Now, if you don't have Flighty or you don't want to pay for Flighty Pro, notably with Flighty, you get your first flight free with all the data and everything. So if you want to just try it out and you've got some tricky travel coming up in the next few weeks, give it a go for that first flight. I would bet you that they earn your money. They also offer like a week-long subscription as well if you're not looking to book that lifetime membership like I did. But if you don't have Flighty, you can also dig into, with some of the airline apps, some of them, the more tech-savvy airlines, that is, there is the Where's My Plane feature on their apps where you can just go ahead and take a look at where those flights are coming from, and then you kind of got to do some manual digging on FlightAware or whatever to see how things are going at those airports. The beauty of Flighty is that it puts it all there for you. But if you need to see some of this information and you don't want to join Flighty, FlightAware has a little bit of this data. You just got to go hunt it down for yourself.
Yeah, or Flight Radar 24 is another popular tracking service. If you can get the tail number for your plane from your smartphone app from your airline, you can plug it in and track its progress from its previous route. A little bit of reverse engineering required. I mean, there's a reason why you and I both gladly pay for Flighty. I think especially for people who are traveling, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year or more, it really pays for itself in terms of the ease of mind, the quick notifications, and then just like a lot of other cool features that don't have anything to do with what we're talking about today.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's head to the airport. What are we doing the day of to protect ourselves in chaotic times, considering this was both of us last week? What's your top tip? Where are you starting?
I just have a thing. I need to be at the airport 2 hours early. If I'm not there, I feel like it doesn't matter that it takes me a grand total of typically 3 minutes or less to actually clear security. It makes me feel good. But, especially when, I have prepared myself for the likelihood of problems, it's just really important to get there earlier. I mean, it's the cliche, better safe than sorry, right? if you can get to the airport earlier, worst case, you've got a little bit more time in the lounge. But the last thing you want, especially when the prospect for problems is high, is to be trying to cut the line through security and then run to the gate. I mean, your whole travel day is just starting off on the wrong foot if you're not getting to the airport that little bit, at least that little bit earlier, whatever that means to you. You know, if I get to the airport at 45 minutes before so I can get to the gate before the boarding door closes. I'm not saying you need to get there 3 hours in advance, but I'm saying just give yourself a little bit of a longer buffer.
Yeah, not to sound like a football coach, but control what you can control when you travel. One of the only things you can control is how early you get to the airport. And if you get stuck in like what we saw last week in Houston, 3+ hour TSA lines, and if you showed up 45 minutes before your flight and then you're, got your palms up asking, what's wrong? How could this have happened to me? Well, guess what? You could have gotten to the airport a little earlier and controlled something like that. Also, who wants that stress? I don't want to soak my shirt before I get on the flight anyway.
You're doing that anyway.
Yeah, every single podcast. Another tip, just avoid checked bags if you can at all costs. I know that's, I have a newfound respect for how hard it is to not check bags now that I have an infant. But if you can avoid those lines, which are often the nastiest at the airport, TSA lines always get kind of a bad rap. But man, those checked bag lines, especially if you don't have status, can get really nasty. And that's a big time waster. And then that's also just pre-security stress. My stress goes away so fast as soon as I'm through the security line, and everything before that is just soaked shirt watch.
Well, and there's pre-security stress. There's post-flight stress of, is my bag going to make it? I mean, if you have your carry-on with you at all times, you just don't have to worry about these things. And, especially as the busy holiday travel season gets underway, I mean, most people are checking one, if not two bags. And if you don't have to be one of them, you can cut that line altogether and just continue on with your travel day. Again, there certainly are plenty of situations in which it's not possible. If you're flying home for Christmas and you need to pack presents and those presents will only fit in a checked bag, I get it. This is not to shame people who do truly need to check a bag, but just ask yourself, do you need a checked bag for 3 nights at home for Thanksgiving? If the answer is yes, ask yourself one more time. Are you sure about that? You sure you need 7 pairs of shoes? If the answer to that is no, probably not, just try it. Try it out, especially on a short, low stakes trip, and see if you can make the transition to carry on when you can.
Yep. Very, very smart. Okay. I want to talk about lounges and lounge access, which is something that we both, preach quite a bit, and it's not just because we're bougie boys. It's because lounges have a lot of utility. For one, we just talked about getting to the airport early. If you don't have someplace to go, sometimes getting to the airport early is an expensive proposition. You can go and spend quite a bit of money at an airport restaurant or sitting around twiddling your thumbs doing nothing in the concourse. That's not fun. Going to an airport lounge is, at least you're getting free food. I can't always stand up for the quality of said food, but it's free, and you have a place to be, which is always nice too. But I think the best agents at the airport are often in the lounge as well, taking care of the premium passengers, the quote unquote premium passengers. And I had this happen to me this weekend when I was flying back from Lansing, missed my connection in Detroit. And I get a notification on the Delta app that they want me to connect through Cleveland on the way back to Minneapolis. They had me Detroit to Cleveland on another CRJ and then back up from Cleveland to Minneapolis. And that sounded like the worst time of my whole life. So I went into the Delta Sky Club and I found an agent in there, and she was wearing a premium services pin. And I asked her, I said, I know there's a nonstop to Minneapolis at 9:00, and I would be super grateful if you could put me on the standby list for that flight. And she click-clacked for 2 seconds and goes, you're confirmed. Not even standby, just you're on the flight. Got you. And I said, thank you very much, and left the lounge. Didn't have a bite, didn't have a sip of coffee, nothing. But whatever that lounge visit is worth on the credit card that I pay for, it was more than worth it to not have to get delayed into Cleveland, and then delayed out of Cleveland on my way home to Minneapolis.
So you're going to sit here with a straight face and tell me that you did not have a red wine in the lounge?
Nope, I did not. I can tell you that with a straight face. I was clean and sober Sunday morning. The stakes were too high. Although on my third hour on the tarmac at Detroit, I decided that I probably made a mistake and I could have used 2 red wines, even though it was 9 a.m, to get myself home that day. But I think that's just one of the great parts about going into an airline-specific lounge. Obviously, the other lounges, you're not going to have airline-specific agents in there, but at least you have a place with Wi-Fi where you can connect and talk to the airlines and things like that as well. So I extol the virtues of going to the lounge all the time, and it's not because I'm a bougie boy. It's really not that expensive for how many perks I get out of it.
You're really trying to turn bougie boy into a thing. We'll see. Let us know. Podcast@thriftytraveler.com. What do you think of Gunnar the bougie boy? I think your story is really important for 3 reasons. One, lounge access is good for a variety of reasons, because if you end up stuck at the airport an extra 2 or 3 hours, it makes those 2 or 3 hours a lot better and a lot less expensive than they would be out in the terminal. 2, part of 1A, let's call it, the dedicated on-hand help with agents who are almost always better trained than the folks you'll find out in the terminal, and a shorter line to actually get that help that you need. So that's really, really important. 2 is that you presented a solution that you wanted, which I think is maybe the single best thing to do when things start to go sideways, is not just say, what can you do for me? To find somebody who can help you out and say, I want you to do this for me. Is this possible? You're going to get to the best solution for you much quicker and not get that Detroit to Cleveland to Minneapolis solution instead. If you can present your own solution of what's going to work for you. And then 3, and probably the most important thing in all of this, is just to be kind. I mean, you said you asked, and I trust you, could you please put me on this 9 a.m. direct flight instead? Kindness is a superpower. These people, whoever you're asking to help you, are empowered to help you. And I guarantee you, they are going to be more likely to help you quickly if you are kind and nice and warm, and don't make them feel like it's their fault that you're having a bad day at the airport. It is not the support agent's fault that your flight got canceled or delayed. It is not the gate agent's fault. It is not the flight attendant's fault. It is not the pilot's fault. Taking it out on them accomplishes nothing. It just makes you look like a dick.
I honestly, yesterday, traveling through the woes that were a blizzarded Detroit airport during the middle of a Delta meltdown, I thought it was going to be a lot worse. I did see one guy talking to an agent, and he did the deep sigh, like table slam, like took a little walk, like very angry. And guess what? That guy didn't get any more help than anybody else. I did see a lot of people who were actually just taking it in stride. And I think everyone at the airport yesterday knew, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be at the airport today. Things aren't going great. But I think everyone had a pretty good sense of humor about everything. So I was pretty impressed with the kind of patience and kindness of people at the airport yesterday. I'm sure there's an anecdote out there. Someone's going to be like, oh, you should have seen the guy I saw, but always a guy too, right?
Oh yeah.
But I mean, we can't speak to that enough. And, when talking to customer service agents, it doesn't always have to be in person. I would also recommend seeking out some alternative forms here. What I usually, like, for instance, once my wife had a flight canceled and I told her, first thing you need to go do is go get in line. Go get yourself physically in line, and then start calling or texting from line. Just give yourself as many options as you can. So what she did was she went into the Sky Club, got into the customer service line, and then started messaging Delta on text message. They have a very slick text message operation. Most of the major airlines do now, where you're texting with a live person. Usually you have to get through like 1 or 2 quick prompts where they're trying to just send you back to the website. And then if you just say, I need to talk to a representative, you just chat with them quickly. And a lot of times the line's a lot shorter. So I would highly recommend that. And then also reaching out on social media. The social media admins on those accounts are often agents that are empowered as well. Mm-hmm. So they can connect you with somebody right away. But cast a big net, see how many different ways you can connect with people. If there's a massive line, you don't need to just stand there and twiddle your thumbs. Start working on your own stuff so you are at least making that time in line worthwhile.
Yeah, all of the above. Get as many irons in the fire as you can, because you never know which one is going to pay off first. So, if you have status, especially high status with an airline, get on hold while you stand in line, as you're tapping out a text message, as you're sending a direct message on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever. You never know which one you're going to get a response from first. But also, those 4 different agents could tell you 4 different things. So then you can get to the resolution that's actually going to work for you, or try again if you don't get the answer that you need in order to get home that night or the next morning or whatever.
Mm-hmm. One last word to the wise about contacting customer service, and then we'll move on. Don't Google Delta customer service to go find the phone number. There are a lot of scams out there.
Oh yeah, so many scams.
Where if you Google just, what's the Delta customer service line, there's a different line that comes up. They pay for that search, and then you start giving them personal details and they take it and run. So make sure you're going to Delta's app to find the customer service button. I just have the Delta customer service saved in my phone. I have it for several airlines. That's a smart way to do things too. In the Flighty app, they have a little section with all of the actual contact information, the phone numbers and the social media accounts and everything. That's also a really great place to find those things as well. But don't just do a quick Google and punch in that first number that you see, because someone might be just taking your data and running away. Anything else? Any other ways you can think of to protect yourself when delays and cancellations rear their head, Kyle?
No, you know what? I really do think the most important thing is, and I'm really glad that, you saw, for the most part, people taking it in stride, dealing with the punches, whatever cliche you want to use here, because that does mean that people are going into this with the right expectations. That as bad as the last few weeks have been, people went into those flights over the weekend saying, you know what? There's a good chance that this goes sideways, and I'm just going to deal with it. And I think everybody needs more of that attitude, regardless of what time of year, shutdown or not. Things do go wrong in air travel. It is a miracle. It is a miracle every single time a metal tube gets off the ground at 500 miles per hour and gets to 35,000 feet and then back on the ground safely, and doing that thousands upon thousands of times a day, generally speaking, on time, is incredible. And so you just got to expect things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, that's really good perspective. Let's talk to some listeners. You ready for that?
Let's do it.
Okay. So sometimes in this line of work, Kyle, we get feedback from our listeners or readers or subscribers that kind of pulls at the heartstrings, like this can be an emotional job for us. Travel's emotional for a lot of people, and we're always really honored and blown away by some of the things we hear out there. And this is one of them. So my guy, Matthew Johnson, writes us with an email subject line that just says, "Never too much Canada." And gosh, if that didn't just really stop me and bring me to tears the other day when I read that, Kyle. He just said that Canada's his favorite country, and he's seen way more of it than even I have. And that's my warning sign.
No, I needed to do that. We gotta bring back the Canada button as often as possible. The readers have spoken.
Listen back to last week's episode for a primer on what this new button here is, the Canada button. But basically, Matthew, you're a beauty and my new favorite listener. Thanks for reaching out. We have 2 questions this week, 2 actual questions from Shiloh. Okay, first, Shiloh wrote us and asked us about our Palm Springs trip. Shiloh asks, where'd you stay? How was the airport? Where'd you eat? I have been going there since before I could walk, and it's still easily one of my favorite cities in the world. Would love to know what you guys did there. So Shiloh is not coming at us out of curiosity, but with some judgment ready to go, because Shiloh is a Palm Springs veteran and has definitely some ideas and some opinions on what we did there.
This new segment is called Roast Our Trip.
Yeah. How'd we do, Shiloh? All right. Any highlights for you, Kyle?
We all stayed at a great boutique hotel, not quite in kind of the downtown area, a little bit south of there, called Dive Palm Springs. I think that was really great. A lot of great meals. I think maybe my favorite was Farm Palm Springs. Great farm-to-table restaurant with kind of a prefix. Am I saying that right? Meal?
What?
Oh, you're the wrong person to ask. No. You are not a bougie boy.
No, I'm not a bougie boy.
Okay, well, let's move on.
I don't eat at restaurants. That's my travel budget.
Yeah. We did some great hiking, including at the aerial tramway. That was a lot of fun. A couple of us rented e-bikes and kind of tooled our way across the city. We saw Leonardo DiCaprio's house, and a couple of other, just a lot of really of the city's cool 50s and 60s architecture. Yeah, it was a blast.
Some of my favorite parts we ate at this Mexican place called /Kila. TAC/QUILA. I had some insanely good shrimp fajitas. The waiter the entire night was extremely worried about my spice tolerance. Every time I ordered something, he goes, "Senor, that's very spicy." And if you could see how I look on YouTube, you know exactly why he said that to me so many times, but pretty insulted by the end of the night that every time I ordered something, I was like, "Can I have the chocolate ice cream?" He was like, "Senor." I don't know. But that was an awesome meal there too. We also, a few of us went on a hike at Taquitos Canyon, which is a beautiful area on the Agua Caliente native reservation there. That was pretty cool. A few of our coworkers went to the zoo. We did not, neither of us went on that expedition, but apparently the zoo there is really cool. And then on the last day before our flight out, we went to the Palm Springs Air Museum, which is a really cool museum attached to the airport, where we did a lot of nerding out about some airplanes and things like that. But they also had a Nighthawk stealth bomber in a little tented, what am I trying to say? Hangar. Oh my God.
You are an aviation professional.
An aviation professional. It's called a hangar. It's a little airplane tent, as I would explain it.
Metal airplane tent, I believe, is the technical term.
Anyway, it was very, very cool. And the Palm Springs Airport, because you asked, Shiloh, also very cool. Open air, also extremely easy. It was, through security in 2 minutes and out into the courtyard to have 2 glasses of red wine before we headed home. So it was pretty cool. Anything else on Palm Springs?
No, it was a great trip.
Okay, another question from Shiloh, and you kind of have to be on YouTube to see this one. Shiloh asks, I need to know the story about the thrifty traveling book on your bookshelf. Is that a coincidence? Is that the inspiration for the site name? So here's the thrifty traveling book right below the on-air sign. You could see it under our YouTube. What is the story behind Mary's book, Kyle?
I would say Shiloh and anybody else who's curious, really go back and listen to I think, episode 3, the interview we did with our founder and CEO, Jared. We tell the whole story about how we are not the original thrifty traveler. The original thrifty traveler is Mary Van Meer, who is the author of this book, Thrifty Traveling. A wonderful woman who gave us a lot of insight, who gave Jared a lot of insight, I should say, in kind of setting up the company and what to do after purchasing the name Thrifty Traveler from her. Mary Van Meer passed away in 2016, but you can see a lot of the fingerprints of the advice that she gave Jared all across the company, including this podcast and getting ourselves out there. So yeah, that book is by her.
Yeah, that is the inspiration, part of the inspiration for this whole company. So another good question from you, Shiloh. If you'd like us to answer your questions on the show, or you have any feedback, or Shiloh, if you want to roast our trip, hit us back up at podcast@thriftytraveler.com. We might feature your question in next week's show. Okay, to close the show, as always, it's on the spot, and I'm putting you on the spot this week, Kyle. You ready?
Fine.
Okay. Kyle, you are nothing if not a man of the people.
You are the only person who has ever said that.
You are so much more than your polished demeanor and effortless style. You put on your Prada chinos one leg at a time, just like everybody else.
What's a chino?
When there's air traffic control delays, your private jet has to wait its turn. No special treatment. Okay? Fine. And as a man of the people, you rubbed elbows with some regular people out there last week in your travels to New York City. People we affectionately refer to as Gen Pop out in the world. So you and our marketing manager, McKenna, had a meetup with some TT fans this week. How was that?
It was great. Yeah, McKenna and I were out in New York last week and met up with a handful of premium subscribers for a little happy hour in Chelsea. It was a great time. Mark, Mike, Carla, Elton, Zach. Thank you all for coming out. A couple of quick highlights. Carla is I would say, a super fan of the podcast. She's hit our email inbox a couple of times, so it was great to see her. She, for as much as we've talked about our spreadsheets, she puts us to shame. I think we saw like 14 of her probably 72 different spreadsheets that she has on her phone to catalog everything from the next trip, the entire trip, the trips that she and her family have planned, not just through 2026, but into 2031, as well as all of her credit cards and miles and everything. It is impressive. And then Mark, a longtime premium subscriber, was making his way to Marrakesh on a Delta One deal that we sent a couple of weeks ago from across the United States to Marrakesh and Delta One for 170,000 Delta Sky miles round trip. So it was great of him to stop by before he makes that trip. But he also dropped something that I don't think I've ever heard somebody put it quite so accurately before. I don't know. I had never realized. I think he said some version of, "This is my fantasy football." That, for all of the time that millions of Americans spend thinking analytically about which fantasy football players to play each week and how to add and drop. And I'm going to make myself look like an idiot because I've never played fantasy football. But to that point, this is my fantasy football.
That's really cool.
It really stuck with me.
Yeah.
So thanks, Mark. Thanks for that pearl.
I like that. Mark, you are a RB1 for us every day of the week, and I am simply a flex in fantasy football parlance. But I really like the way to think about that with fantasy football. All right. Well, thrifty travelers who went and met Kyle, thank you for giving Kyle a little bit of time. He really needs it, and he needed a little bit of the affection that you threw his way. So thank you. And Carla, specifically, thanks for listening. That's really cool. All right. I think that's going to be it for the show.
Let's do it. Let's wrap it up.
Let's get out of here. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice, if you would, please. And like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. There you can see Mary's book in the background here underneath our on-air sign. Send this episode to someone you know who needs a vacation or somebody who is traveling in the next week or two here. If you have feedback, hit us at podcast@thriftytraveler.com. I'd love to hear from you there. Tell us about the team, Kyle.
This episode was produced by your favorite host who does not want to go to Cleveland, Gunnar Olson. It was produced and edited by Sylvia Thomas and edited on video by Kyle Thomas. Our theme music is by Benjamin Tissot. See you next week.
See ya.